let's get to the overview of the Spanish road trip tour with EF Ultimate Break. Basically is an 11-day 5-city trip where you get to visit a lot of Spain's top destinations like Madrid, Barcelona, Seville, Valencia, and more. Here's a photo of the complete itinerary. EF does offer different trip types for this one. Personally, I took the standard trip, which basically means you're going to be staying at a mix of hostels and hotels. If you are seriously considering taking the trip, I highly recommend that you book the plus option. I will explain why in a little bit. Okay, so category number 1 is going to be pricing. Where does this trip rank in terms of affordability? It sort of falls right in the middle. If you look at the prices for the trip online, you can see that you're going to be paying around $3,000 to go on this trip. But don't forget that this price also includes flights. So if you happen to have a lot of airline miles, you can always book your own flights and it will be much cheaper. Was this trip worth it for the price? Personally, I believe so. This was my first trip with EF ever and we saw so much in such a short amount of time, so I'm really happy with what I paid for it. The next category that we are going to be discussing is transportation. This trip is a road trip and I just want to make sure that you guys understand that. You are going to be on the bus for very long periods of time. When you drive from city to city, you will have pit stops along the way to use the bathroom, to eat, and also visit a couple of other cities with a quick tour. For example, we drove to Seville from Madrid, and that is typically a 6-hour drive, and we made a pit stop in Toledo on the way there so we could use the bathroom, eat, and also do a quick tour of the city. So make sure that you pack your snacks and bring lots of things to keep you entertained during those long bus rides. Up next is activity level. I think it's super important to talk about the pace of these trips because they can be very different. On their website, it says that the activity level for this trip is low, which I kind of disagree with. There's a lot of walking and sightseeing on this specific tour, and you are seeing 5 cities in 11 days, which is a super short amount of time, so it does feel like you're constantly on the move. Obviously, if you need a break, you can choose to sit out on any of the tours and activities that EF has planned on this tour. And I guess they do give you a lot of free time to do stuff on your own, so I'm gonna go ahead and say that it's more of a medium in the activity level for the Spanish road trip tour. Okay, now for the accommodations. This is always a big one that everyone asks for any EF trip. How are the accommodations and the hotels, and where did you guys stay? And they want to know everything about it. I'm gonna go ahead and put a full list of all the places that we stayed on this trip in the description below, so if you are curious about it, make sure to check that out. Like I mentioned before, this was a standard trip that I took, so we did stay at a mix of hotels and hostels. The majority of places were very nice and modern and clean. Like the Generator, which is the hostel that we stayed at in Madrid. That hostel was way nicer than the 4-star hotel that I booked prior to starting this tour. The only one we didn't like was the hostel that we stayed at in Barcelona, which was just not it. I think we all complained about that one, so hopefully they don't even stay there anymore. So this is why I recommend that if you do book the Spanish road trip tour, that you choose the plus option instead of the standard option or the essential option, which means that you'll be staying at nicer hotels and you'll only have one other roommate as opposed to 3 or 4 more per room. Up next is food. Once again, since I did book the standard option for this trip, only the welcome and the farewell dinner were included in the price. It really wasn't anything fancy. The restaurants were nice and the food was good, but it was nothing compared to what we had in Egypt. We were basically responsible for all of our other meals, which since we were in Spain wasn't that expensive, so it was fine. Some of the best food that I had on that trip was basically from when we were kind of just like walking either with people or on my own and just happened to stumble upon like a little hole in the wall place. So I highly recommend that you do that during the trip. Some other really important things to note about this trip, like I mentioned before, they do have a lot of free time incorporated into the itinerary already. I feel like they did a really good job with this itinerary in terms of that. We did have a lot of scheduled tours like the Royal Alcazar in Sevilla and Park Güell in Barcelona, but then you do have some free time either to relax or do any other activities that you may want to do. Another super important thing to remember is that if you do have motion sickness, please make sure to bring your Dramamine because you will be on the bus a lot for this trip and you will regret it if you don't. And also don't forget to bring a camera because Spain is absolutely gorgeous and you will get to see so much of it during this road trip. I think that this was a really great trip for the price, and also getting to road trip around Spain instead of either taking the train or flying from city to city was really cool because we did get to see some parts of Spain that people typically wouldn't get to see if they weren't driving around like we did. And it's also awesome that I get to say that I visited 5 Spanish cities in 11 days. For those of you who have watched my Egypt review video, please let me know in the comments if you like this category format better or if you'd rather me keep doing day-by-day overviews of the trips. And if you haven't seen that one yet, make sure to watch that next to compare. I really appreciate getting feedback from you guys. Thanks for watching and happy travels.